Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. I hope you had a great day. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories, where people conform to the letter but not the spirit of a request. The first story is called How to Stop a Petty Manager. We worked for a utility company at the time, so we worked out and about carrying out various repairs. The newly promoted manager, Mr. Twetterly, decided that leaving the yard 2 minutes early was a huge offense to his authority. He called a meeting for all outdoor staff. Having checked the cameras for the last week, I've noticed a significant number of you leaving the yard before your 5:30 PM finishing time. This will not be happening in the future. Your hours are 7:30 AM to 5:30 PM. Is that understood? A few grunts of yes from amongst the 40 or so guys present. Cue malicious compliance. We lined our brands up on the road outside the depot every morning for a week until exactly 7:30 AM, when we then entered the yard to start our day. Mr. Twetterly has a hissy fit and says you're supposed to be in the office at 7:30 and not just arriving at the yard. So he was informed that he told us that we weren't allowed to leave the yard until 5:30 PM and our hours are 7:30 AM to 5:30 PM. So we naturally assumed that if we weren't allowed offsite until 5:30, then we weren't allowed onsite until 7:30. He was absolutely livid that we'd thrown back his stupidity at him. They'd paid 4 starmen to come at 7 AM to process our orders, and nobody put any in because we were all set outside the yard. Needless to say, he stopped being so petty after that. The next story is called Timesheet Compliance. I've been a freelance contractor for over 30 years in the UK and have worked for many companies, usually on an hourly or daily rate. About 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to work for a client on a 6-month contract at a daily rate and also to work from home, except for some site visits for meetings. Since I was working from home, I was able to work my own hours. I was judged basically on my output, not the bum hours on seat. I would work whenever I wanted, an hour here or there, multiple breaks during the workday, and also sometimes at weekends whenever I felt like it. However, I ensured that I at least complied with the 40 hours a week minimum, even though I was on a daily rate. The way that I worked on this contract was that I would submit my timesheet for my boss to sign. It would be sent to my agency, and they would do all the work to create invoices to the end client and pay me based on how long I worked that week. I did not have to submit invoices to the agency. They used something called self-invoicing. Now, because of the hassle of trying to record all the start times, times for breaks, etc., it was a pain to fill in the client's timesheet. They only allowed for 1 start time, 1 lunch break, 1 end time. So, because I was on a daily rate, I would just record a standard 9 to 17:30 start and stop and 30-minute lunch for every weekday, knowing I was putting in the hours and not cheating the client. This was all well for a couple of months. My boss would sign the timesheet, the agency would invoice the client and just send me the money each month. At some point I would reconcile my books, noting the payments against my days worked. At some point the boss barked at how I was filling in my timesheet and asked for it to be more detailed. This was where the malicious compliance took over. I would carefully record all the periods I was working, which I did anyway, and then create a timesheet for the week. This resulted in several pages of timesheets rather than the previous 5 lines, now showing all periods I worked, all breaks I took, total hours for each day, total hours for the week. My boss would need to check all of this and sign it, and we continued that way for a while. Now you may think this was only small malicious compliance. It took me extra effort to comply. My boss got the detailed timesheet he required and nothing changed. However, there was an unexpected consequence of this compliance, which was rooted in the contract I had signed and the contract that the client had signed with the immediate agency. It came down to the definition of a working day. Remember, I was on a daily rate, not an hourly rate, even though the client insisted on a breakdown of all my hours. After a few months, when I tried to reconcile my own company's books, it seemed that I was getting paid more than I expected, 40% more to be precise. When I investigated, it turned out that I had overlooked my contract that stated I was paid a full day's contract rate, irrespective of how many hours I worked on that day. So if I happened to work 10 hours a day, I would just get the day rate. But if I worked for only an hour, I would still get the full day rate. Since I was now giving a timesheet that also detailed the few hours I might work on Saturday and Sunday, as well as the 5 work weeks, even though I was still only working a total of 40 hours, I was getting paid for 7 days rather than 5 days. I decided not to bring it to the notice of my boss, since I doubted he had visibility of the invoices. He was just signing off my timesheet every week. This resulted in an unexpected pay rise for the final couple of months of my contract. I just wished I had complied earlier in my contract. The third story is called Thanks for the Extra Money. I used to be sent out on training a few times a year, and I could claim mileage at a set rate per mile. At the time, most people working at this place lived in a town 5 miles north of the office, and training tended to be in a large city about 60 miles south of the office. At the time, I lived halfway between the office and the city, so 30 miles south of the office, 30 miles north of the city where training was. So I was only claiming 60 miles expenses for every trip, home, city, home, rather than 120 miles, office, city, office. Finance went on a cost-saving drive and announced that we had to claim mileage office, city, office. The reasoning was that the majority of staff who lived 5 miles north would have been paying for their own fuel to get to the office, so they shouldn't be claiming those extra 5 miles 2 times on a training day. I understood the reasoning for it, but assumed that as I was so far south, they'd still accept the 60-mile claim from me. Boy was I wrong, and I was completely reamed out the next time I put in a claim. Despite pointing out that I was saving them money, I was accused of trying to defraud the company. I was told to redo my claim sheet and that they wouldn't put a formal warning on my employee file this time. So instead of taking it higher, I was now being paid double in mileage and saving 60 miles on fuel on not driving to the office on training days. I complied. A few months later, my boss wasn't in, so I had to get her boss to sign my travel expenses. He asked why I was claiming office, city, office when I lived so much closer. I explained what had happened and he was angry, but signed it and told me he'd take it to finance for me as he was heading that way. A policy amendment was emailed out to all staff later that day, stating that on training days we were to claim either home, city, home or office, city, office, whichever was the shorter. Ah well, the extra money was nice when I got it. The last story is called Create a Strategy to Improve Your Grades. When I was a freshman in college, I had a math teacher who was very strict about how she taught and how she expected us to learn. For example, she would force students to take notes, and if they didn't, she would make them leave. During our midterm exam, someone asked how much time was left, and she said 5 minutes. At this point, I was only about halfway done with the test, so I rushed and finished it barely in time. I and most other students delivered the test and left the room. When I checked my phone, I realized there were another 20 minutes left. The students who hadn't finished in time told me that after we left, she realized that she read the clock wrong and gave them another 20 minutes that I and the others didn't have. I've always been pretty good at math, but obviously after rushing half the test I didn't get a good grade. The part I didn't rush was perfect though. The next class, after showing us our results, she said that we needed to develop a strategy to improve our grades. She said that if we created a plan, stuck to it and provided evidence of us doing it, she would give us some extra credit. What she expected us to do was say something like, "I'll practice every week and submit pictures of us doing it as evidence," or something like that. Now, while I didn't blame her for reading the clock wrong, I did blame the fact that I thought I only had 5 minutes left for not doing well on the test. I was confident that I could have gotten a perfect grade on it if I had the extra 20 minutes. And so what I said I would do is bring a watch to the next exam. Was it an arrogant thing to say? Yes. But I also thought it was stupid to follow along with a plan to micromanage our studies. She got mad at me and said that if I didn't do anything else, I would fail the final for sure. But I assured her that the watch was enough for me to do better. A few months later, on the day of the final, I submitted a picture of a watch on my wrist as my evidence for sticking with the strategy. I got a perfect grade on the final. Since my strategy for improving my grades worked, she had to give me extra credit, not before arguing that I didn't deserve it, of course. And now it's your time to shine. Let me know what you think about the stories. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the stories? I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. Bye bye.